I think I'm getting all this special treatment. The ladies wanted to bring a wheelchair out to bring me here. Just because I'm the oldest in the house, they wanted to treat me like this. But thank you very much, lady. I've been asked to say a few words to the crowd about the beginning of this wonderful company. And it is a tremendous privilege and pleasure for me to do so. But before I say a few words, I have a little complaint to make. And as Deo Prasad is the CEO of Complaints, I'm going to make it to him. And the complaint is about this guy that I'm hearing so much about, named Sankar. And I know that everybody is in agreement that he did a marvelous job together with his team to bring this whole group together. But I have a little bone to pick with him, and that is, he's been spreading a rumor that I'm the Godfather. He even has Morris Sankar calling me Godfather. But as far as I remember that movie, the most devastating thing and memorable thing was when the Godfather arranged for his henchmen to cut off the head of the horse, the prize horse of one of his enemies. And I'm sure you remember this. And they put it in his bed so that when he woke up in the morning, he found this bloody horse head lying down next to him, and it was his prize horse. Well, I want to tell you, say in front of all of you, that I have never ever cut off any favorite animal of any competition that we've been up against in my life. So my wife, Denise, who you know how wives like to get involved in these things, has asked me to get Sankar to call me the grandfather, not the Godfather. So I hope he will do so in future. I would like to invite you to come with me on a nostalgic journey back down memory lane to the good old days when this group actually started. And we'll make a few stops on the way to reminisce over some very special moments that help to shape and define what A&M is all about. The company did in fact start in 1968, and the first general manager was a chap named David Mingo, who was the manager of ESSO. He was a Trinidadian. And when the company was registered, he called me and offered me the job of sales manager, which I accepted to join in the new year. So that was at the end of 1968, so I joined in 1969. So I'm a pretty old employee of this fantastic group, ex-employee. David was a darn good fellow, and he started off the company down at Camp and Rob Street in a very old building. It was more or less a house that suited us down to the ground for what we started at. And the company had a fantastic pedigree because it was a partnership between Neal Massy Holdings, and the person there was Sidney Knox, who was managing director at the time. And his brainchild was to have a company outside of Trinidad, and some of you might remember that in those days, CARICOM was just being formed. Excuse me. So he got together with a company called Tugs and Lighters, a fellow named Ralph Stout in Trinidad, and they were a tremendously successful company dealing with Detroit diesel Allison, and they specialized in that particular product. In the case of Neal Massy was the biggest conglomerate in Trinidad, and they had the largest assembly plant, and the company was called Neal Massy Limited. They also had a subsidiary called Cannings, which had numerous supermarkets all over Trinidad. They had Grell & Company, and that was an office equipment company. they had industrial gas, and they had a bunch of other ones because how they grew in size from growing their core businesses, but they also grew from acquisitions. So the pedigree of a joint venture between Tubbs and Lighters and Neal and Massy was quite a considerable one, and the strength of those two companies was marvelous. So it started in Guyana, and we got from Tubbs and Lighters, we got Detroit Diesel, we started with that, Allison Transmission, and also a chap by the name of Desmond Jardine, who was a great engineer, and he came down and he trained our guys and did a marvelous job. There was also another chap named George Sutherland, who did a great job in training our mechanics for the job ahead. Remember now, by this time, in 1969 when I joined, I don't think the company had made a single sale. So we were starting from scratch. And in those days, it was, Guyana was kind of tough. It was tough to get going in any form, shape or form. And we did have a hard time in the beginning, but we got from Neal and Massy, I supported trucks, and Ingersoll Rand, and a couple of agencies that helped to start the company. Now, it's all well and good to have companies like Neal and Massy and Tubbs and Lighters backing us because we could get agencies that they had represented in Trinidad and were successful with. But of course, we had to find our own Guyanese personnel. And also, we had to find the customers for the product that we were selling. The beginning was very scary for us because remember in those days, we started from scratch. We were going up against people like Geddes Rand, who was a big, well-established company at the time, and a lot of J.D. Santos and so on. And the competition was tremendous. So, but we were able to handle that. What happened was that we started to, when the Bandar plant was set up as an industrial site, so we didn't have to accommodate it in that building that I was telling you about. But in 1973, we were able to acquire the present facilities that are now Associated Industries and the rest of the group. And from the time we got that, we were able to take on other agencies that we were looking at. And one of them was a vehicle that General Motors produced. And it was called the Basic Transport Vehicle. And that vehicle was an effort by General Motors, which, as you know probably, in those days, was the largest corporation in the world and produced more tires and more vehicles than any other company at the time. So they wanted to give something back to the countries in which they were doing business, and many of those companies were developing countries. So they wanted to have a basic transport vehicle, which would be cheaper, which would enable people who are not too well off to be able to buy a vehicle. So once again, we went to the government and we were able to show them that if we could bring in this equipment, the plant equipment and the raw material, thank you, duty-free, it would help us to contribute to the government in saving foreign exchange. And at that time, you may recall that the political parties in power used to say that we want to make the small man a real man. And so our basic transport vehicle fitted into that beautifully. We got permission to bring in everything duty-free, plant, equipment, structures, fixtures, and we got the General Motors engineer to come down and set up the plant in the A&M building that we had just bought. So we were able to utilize that space immediately. What we wanted to do was to, like we tried to do over the years with England, to do things in a little different way than the norm. So we were having a meeting in the company, in my office, trying to work up a plan as to how we would introduce this vehicle, which was the first vehicle manufactured in CARICOM, because the other vehicles like in Trinidad and the other places They were assembly lines, they were not manufacturing. So we were the first manufacturer. So we wanted to do it in a special way. So at the meeting in my office, my secretary Celeste and the others, we were talking about how to do this, how we could make it a dramatic entrance and all that. And Celeste Bowen came up with the idea and she said, wouldn't it be marvelous if this vehicle could just appear out of thin air? And we all laughed and thought that was, rather crazy. And then Patrick Passard, who was at the meeting, said, well, I know a helicopter pilot, and maybe we could bring it in by helicopter. And we had good relations. We were doing tires for the GDF, and they had a helicopter. So we worked on that. And we arranged for them to let this helicopter pilot bring a tapir from Ogle down to Inland. Now, one of the main guys in the tapir plant was a fellow named Michael Curtin. Is Michael here? He was there last night. I don't know if he's there. Anyhow, Michael was the brain guy. And there was the chap, the engineer from GM was a fellow named Rusty Kershaw, who, in the end, he told us that the tapir, sorry, I've gone ahead of it a bit now, but our basic transport vehicle was the best basic transport vehicle in any country that General Motors was responsible for. So they had a basic transport vehicle in many countries, including Suriname. But he said that ours was the best design and the best constructed. And we then decided, okay, we're going to have this thing come down from Ogle by helicopter. And then we would invite all of our directors from Trinidad, all of our customers, main customers, all our overseas representatives, and a bunch of dignitaries and so on, plus our staff. So this launching of the tapir. But then, when they went to Ogle to do a dry run with the tapir, they found that the helicopter could not lift the tapir. They couldn't get it off the ground comfortably because the breeze was blowing a lot. And remember, the idea was to fly the tapir from Ogle to Inland over Georgetown. So it was Michael Curtin who came up with the idea. That would have stumped a lot of people, but he just said, we just take the engine out, story done. So they took the engine out, the helicopter took it up, and it was beautiful. So the time came now, and we had all these people there at the inland, and not many people were aware of what was taking place. Obviously, there were a few of us in the office, but on the staff, but none of the dignitaries, the guests, the ministry. The ministry came, we invited the government people and so on. So we were all gathered there. In the meanwhile, Neal and Massy had sent them their all-girls steel band, the Trendsetters, and they were playing music. We were all gathered on the lawn. I think if some of you went to the welcome last night, you would have seen some of the photographs of the helicopter coming in and so on. And the helicopter, we were waiting there, having drinks and so on, and then we were waiting for this occasion. We were, the ones who knew about it, were, saying a little prayer because the tapir had to be lowered quite a long way below the helicopter because of the swing and so on. Anyhow, the tapir was coming over and everybody was waiting to see what is going to happen, And then we heard the chopper making a noise coming in, and the other people sort of were a little amazed and so on. And then when the chopper arrived, they were stunned. They were stunned into silence because they didn't expect anything like this. And then the chopper, after that, there was a spontaneous burst of applause for what was taking place. And then Patrick Passard again brought the helicopter down, and we had a spot marked on the grass where we wanted it to land, and the helicopter landed it there. And then there was another burst of applause. And you can imagine the pride that we all felt at that time to have achieved that, and everything went smoothly. I still choke up at the thought of that stuff coming in there because of all the work that had gone beforehand, and then these people were able to see this thing before their very eyes. But we were very grateful to people like Richard Waddell from Brell & Company and Bobby Kwong from the Brell & Company for helping our people to get to understand all about Xerox and how to sell Xerox. And Xerox became the epitome of what we felt about ourselves in England. We had a good product, we had excellent staff, and two of the people who were responsible for the esprit de corps and the camaraderie that existed as a result of England were Donna and Denise, who are both right here, and they did a tremendous job because the excitement that they brought to England was very infectious. So people in all the areas got to feel the same spirit that they showed about that. But the two of them too were also very special in the company because they were the ones who made it so interesting to be working at England. The club, they were very involved in the club in arranging different activities. But the two of them, and Xerox, and Royston Ribeiro and Rinsky Hastings were tremendously instrumental in making England what it is today. I must say that. And we're entirely grateful for what they've done.